welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the heart-stopping drama and intricate emotional webs of Genoa City. Today is a beautiful day to unpack one of the most psychologically shattering and emotionally complex storylines we have ever witnessed on our screens. So grab a seat and prepare for a journey into the darkest corners of love, trauma, and survival. The air in Genoa City has been thick with anticipation, but nothing could have prepared us for the profound emotional roller coaster that Sally Spectra and Billy Abbott are currently riding. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed as though the universe was finally offering a profound sense of grace to two people who have been battered by unimaginable grief. Sally Spectra, a woman whose fierce independence and relentless ambition have always been her armor, was finally allowing herself to lower her defenses. She was beginning to attend her routine prenatal doctor appointments, stepping into those sterile, brightly lit clinic rooms, not with the defensive posture of a woman waiting for the other shoe to drop, but with the fragile, beautiful hope of a mother ready to embrace her future. She was actively letting herself feel the reality of this pregnancy. She was allowing the truth of the life growing inside her to permeate her guarded heart. For Sally, this was a monumental psychological shift. The devastating loss of her baby, Ava, had left a crater in her soul, a wound so deep and agonizing that the mere thought of trying again felt like walking barefoot over shattered glass. Yet, here she was, bravely facing the monitors and the medical charts, choosing hope over fear. By her side, Billy Abbott was a picture of unwavering devotion. The love between Billy and Sally was visibly growing stronger, cementing itself into a formidable bond through the shared vulnerability of this journey into parenthood. Billy was stepping up, offering his hand to hold, his shoulder to lean on, and his endless reassurances that this time, everything would be different. This time, they would walk out of the hospital with a healthy baby. This time, the tears would be of joy, not of earth-shattering sorrow. The audience watched as their connection deepened, rooting for this couple to finally catch a break, to finally experience the pure, unadulterated joy of bringing a new life into the world without the shadows of their past darkening the delivery room. But this is Genoa City, and true happiness is often just a fleeting prelude to unimaginable devastation. The narrative took a turn so sharp and so cruel that it left audiences gasping for air. It all began during what was supposed to be a standard, routine ultrasound. The scene was set with an almost agonizingly deceptive calm, the soft hum of the medical equipment, the cool, clinical gel applied to Sally's stomach, the expectant, breathless smiles exchanged between Sally and Billy as they waited to hear the rhythmic, galloping sound of their child's heartbeat. And then, the revelation that changed everything. The technician's eyes widened, the wand paused, and the words hung in the air like a miraculous invocation. Sally is pregnant with twins. And this is the moment I almost screamed at the screen. Twins. The sheer magnitude of that revelation sent shockwaves through the room. For a split second, the joy was blinding, to babies, to lives. A double blessing to heal the double traumas they both carried. Billy's eyes filled with tears of absolute wonder, and Sally let out a breath that sounded like a laugh, a sob, and a prayer all rolled into one. It was a moment of pure, cinematic euphoria, but the euphoria did not even have the time to fully settle into their bones before the atmosphere in the room violently shifted. The technician's smile faltered. The doctor was called in. The silence in the room suddenly became heavy, suffocating, and terrifyingly familiar. The monitor showed two distinct forms, but the data told a story of impending tragedy. The doctor, with a gentle, a devastating tone reserved for the worst kind of news, delivered a crushing blow, while one fetus was developing normally. The second twin was showing severe signs of weakness and distress. The second baby was struggling to survive. The air was instantly sucked out of the room. The joy that had illuminated Sally and Billy's faces just seconds prior was brutally extinguished, replaced by cold, paralyzing terror. The medical mandate was swift, uncompromising, and absolute. In order to give the weak twin even a fighting chance at survival, Sally was immediately ordered onto strict, absolute bed rest. She was not to move. She was not to work. She was not to experience any form of physical exertion or emotional stress. She was to remain entirely immobilized, her body transformed into a fragile incubator, her entire existence reduced to the singular, agonizing task of keeping her unborn children alive. For Sally Spectra, a woman who has always defined herself by her motion, her hustle, and her ability to fight her way out of any corner, this mandate was a psychological death sentence. Confinement is Sally's greatest enemy. To be stripped of her autonomy, to be tethered to a hospital mattress with 4 lions and constant fetal monitors, was a violation of her very nature. But she accepted it. She accepted it because the ghost of baby Ava was standing in the corner of that hospital room, a silent, heartbreaking reminder of what happens when a pregnancy fails. Sally would endure any torture, any confinement, any loss of self to ensure she did not have to bury another child. However, the true horror of this storyline does not solely stem from the medical crisis itself. The true horror is unfolding in the psychological collapse of Billy Abbott. The news of the weak twin and the high-risk nature of the pregnancy did not just worry Billy, it fundamentally broke him. It reached deep into his psyche and violently ripped the bandages off the most agonizing wound of his life. The death of his daughter, Delia. Delia's death on that dark, lonely road has always been the defining tragedy of Billy's existence. It is the ghost that haunts his every waking moment, the failure that he has never been able to forgive himself for. He could not protect Delia, he was not there to save her. And now, faced with the terrifying prospect of losing another child, Billy's unresolved PTSD has been triggered with atomic force. The rational, supportive partner vanished in that ultrasound room, replaced by a man consumed by absolute, blinding, trauma-driven terror. Billy's reaction was immediate and extreme. He completely abandoned his corporate empire. Chancellor Abbott, the boardroom battles, the executive decisions, all of it ceased to exist in his mind. He dropped everything without a second thought, effectively ghosting his professional responsibilities to establish a permanent, obsessive visual at Sally's hospital bedside. On the surface, this might look like the ultimate act of devotion. A partner dropping everything to be by his loved one's side during a crisis. But the reality of Billy's presence in that hospital room is far from supportive. It is toxic, suffocating, and deeply dangerous. Billy has become a warden in a clinical prison. His fear has mutated into a desperate, terrifying need for absolute control. Because he cannot control the biological development of the fetuses, he has compensated by obsessively controlling every single aspect of Sally's environment. He monitors her every breath. He watches the rhythmic rise and fall of her chest with a manic intensity, terrified that if he looks away for even a second, tragedy will strike. He interrogates the nurses over every decimal point on her blood pressure chart. He questions the doctors with a hostile, desperate paranoia, convinced that they are missing something, that they are failing to protect his children. The environment in that hospital room has become incredibly tense. The silence is no longer peaceful. It is heavy with Billy's unblinking scrutiny. He controls Sally's diet with a terrifying rigidity, analyzing every calorie, every nutrient, every sip of water she takes. If she shifts uncomfortably, he is instantly hovering over her, demanding to know if she is in pain, if she is cramping, if the babies are okay. If she sighs heavily, he assumes she is experiencing a medical emergency. He has effectively stripped Sally of her voice, projecting his own colossal trauma onto her physical body. For Sally, the situation is rapidly degenerating into a waking nightmare. She is already terrified. She is already lying flat on her back, staring at acoustic ceiling tiles, praying to a god she isn't sure is listening to save the tiny life flickering inside her. She is already battling the suffocating memories of losing Ava, the phantom pains of a grief that never truly heals. She needs comfort. She needs peace. She needs a partner who can anchor her to reality. Instead, she has Billy, whose hypervigilance is acting as a constant, blaring alarm bell, reminding her every single second that they are standing on the edge of an abyss. Sally feels like she is suffocating. The hospital room, which is supposed to be a place of healing and safety, has been transformed into a psychological prison. She is trapped not only by her medical condition, but by the crushing weight of Billy's trauma. She cannot express her own fears because Billy's panic is so overwhelming that it consumes all the oxygen in the room. If she cries, he panics. If she is silent, he panics. She is forced to constantly manage his emotional state while simultaneously fighting for the lives of her unborn twins. It is an impossible, agonizing burden. The tension builds, the monitors beep, the clock ticks. The sterile smell of the hospital becomes nauseating. Billy's eyes are always on her, staring, searching, fearing. The pressure is immense. The walls are closing in, the air is too thin to breathe. And then, the inevitable happens. The pressure cooker explodes. The conflict detonates with a raw, ugly ferocity. Sally, pushed to the absolute brink of her sanity by days of relentless confinement and Billy's suffocating control, finally snaps. She cannot take another adjusted pillow. She cannot take another interrogating question about her heart rate. She cannot take the feeling of being a fragile, broken vessel under a microscope. She erupts, her voice cracking with the sheer force of her exhaustion and terror. She screams that she is not a prisoner. She yells that he is not protecting her. He is smothering her. She begs him to stop looking at her like she is a ticking time bomb, to stop treating her like she is already a tragedy waiting to be written. Billy fires back, his own voice laced with the hysterical edge of a man who is watching his worst nightmares play out in real time. He cannot back down. He cannot relax. He screams about Delia. He screams about the unbearable agony of a tiny coffin, the cold reality of a loss that destroys a soul. He justifies his obsessive control as the only way to keep the darkness at bay. He accuses Sally of not understanding the stakes, of being careless with the fragile lives hanging in the balance. It is a brutal, agonizing clash of two deeply traumatized people, both fighting for survival, both entirely unable to give the other what they need. The words are sharp, the tears are hot. The panic is absolute, but the most devastating consequence of this explosive argument is not the emotional damage to their relationship. It is the immediate, catastrophic physical toll it takes on Sally's body. The human body is not designed to endure that level of psychological trauma without consequence, especially not a body that is already fighting a desperate battle to sustain a high-risk twin pregnancy. The intense emotional stress, the screaming, the crying, the sheer panic of the confrontation all triggers a massive biological response. The monitors in the room, which Billy had been watching so obsessively, suddenly begin to blare. The rhythmic beeping turns into a frantic, terrifying alarm. Sally gasps, clutching her stomach as a sharp, agonizing pain rips through her. Her blood pressure spikes dangerously. The stress has induced a severe physical reaction, actively worsening her condition and throwing the already weak fetus into critical distress. Billy freezes. The color drains completely from his face. The argument dies in his throat, replaced by a silence so profound it feels like a physical blow. The doctors and nurses rush into the room, a flurry of medical urgency, pushing past him, shouting orders, checking the monitors. Billy is shoved aside, suddenly entirely useless, entirely powerless. And this is the moment of absolute, chilling horror for Billy Abbott. As he stands in the corner of that sterile room, watching the medical team fight to stabilize the woman he loves and the children he is so desperate to save, the crushing realization hits him. His obsessive need for control, his trauma-driven hypervigilance, his suffocating, paranoid protection, it didn't save them, it caused this. His desperate attempt to prevent a tragedy has actively triggered the medical emergency he feared most. He has become the architect of his own nightmare. The psychological sanctioned trauma that Sally has endured under his watch has pushed her body to the breaking point. The stress of being his prisoner has endangered the babies more than any biological weakness could have. Billy is plunged into an absolute, suffocating terror. He is staring down the barrel of a new, unimaginable loss, and this time, he knows that his own brokenness is the weapon that fired the shot. The scene is a masterclass in tragic irony. The man who abandoned his empire to play savior has become the greatest threat to the lives he swore to protect. The woman who sacrificed her freedom to save her babies is now fighting for her life because the cage was too tight. The love that was supposed to sustain them has turned into a toxic, lethal force. As the doctors work frantically over Sally, and Billy watches his world collapse once again, we are left to grapple with the terrifying consequences of unresolved grief. Can a love built on the foundation of past traumas ever truly survive the pressure of a new crisis? When the dust settles in that hospital room, and the fate of the twins is finally revealed, what will be left of Sally and Billy? Will they be able to forgive each other for the horrors of this day? Or has the ghost of Delia Abbott finally claimed another victim?